Welcome to Leigh Dickey TV. Hit subscribe to follow along with the fun. Now let's get on to today's video. How I would introduce NCIS Hawaii. I tell you, next. So how I would introduce NCIS Hawaii. Now this specific new spin-off of the NCIS franchise was not introduced in the typical way where it is a spin-off of the main show or one of the spin-offs that existed. So NCIS New Orleans, NCIS Los Angeles. It's not one of the spin-offs that has existed, and it wasn't spun off from that. It's just, it was introduced, or it's going to be introduced, I'm assuming, in the fall, because they started filming in July or so, or in June rather, earlier, like within the last, say, 6 weeks or so. It is going to get introduced just as a brand new show on the slate, on the docket, if you will, on the CBS schedule. Now, NCIS, the parent show, which in itself is a spin-off of JAG, will move to Mondays to act as a lead-in for NCIS Hawaii. Now, NCIS Hawaii is being led by Vanessa Lachey. She is the lead in the show, the first ever female lead in NCIS history. So, in terms of how I would do it, I probably would have spun it off from, say, NCIS New Orleans. At the very least, I would have spun it off from NCIS New Orleans. But if we're going to spin it off from anything, I would have each of the shows involved. So you have NCIS LA with LL Cool J, Chris O'Donnell, Sam Hanna, and Callan, respectively. Plus, you know, Kenzie Blythe, Daniela Rua, Eric Christian Olsen, and Marty Deeks, Barrett Foa, Renee Felice Smith. I'd have as many people involved in this spin-off as humanly possible, because it looks like CBS is putting a lot of stock in this NCIS Hawaii spin-off. So let's set it up properly. I'd have a giant crossover between NCIS, the parent show, NCIS New Orleans, and NCIS LA, and I'll get into how that's all going to work in just a second. All right, so constructing how I would introduce the new NCIS Hawaii spinoff, which I assume is going to premiere sometime in the fall. I, as I said, would have it stretch over all three NCIS shows. The parent show, NCIS, you have NCIS LA, NCIS New Orleans. I would have it start on the parent show and then sort of morph into a multi-night arc. So, you know, you have Mark Harmon, Wilmer Valderrama, Sean Murray, the team, Emily Wickersham before she exits the show, Maria Bello before she exits the show, and I would have it start there with a case that the main show basically picks up. It lands in their jurisdiction, in their lap, and it has ties to, I would tie it directly to Hawaii somehow. I really can't tell you how I would do it, because, I mean, just tie the case to Hawaii. So I would tie this main NCIS episode that's going to spin off into NCIS Hawaii to Hawaii, but I would have him say, like, travel, like, oh, he's had stops in LA, he's had stops in New Orleans. So you would go from NCIS, the parent show, to then NCIS New Orleans, because I think that's next on the schedule in terms of how the shows aired. So you would have this go from NCIS to NCIS New Orleans, and then have Scott Bakula, Rob Kirkovich, and the rest of the team, Nakar Zedigan. I would still have Lucas Black and Christopher LaSalle on the show, but I would have the team from NCIS New Orleans then pick it up from there, because then, like, if the body that ends up on NCIS to start this whole thing off has ties to both New Orleans and LA, I would have, you know, each jurisdiction and each show sort of pick apart how they think. It's almost like a giant sort of television game of Clue and whodunit, right? So I would have them go from NCIS to NCIS New Orleans, and then have Scott Bakula and the team pick it up from there. You have Vanessa Ferlito, of course, as well, and then CCH Ponder. Like, I'd have intermittent, like, okay, so you have the NCIS, the main NCIS team, Mark Harmon, Sean Murray, Wilmer Valderrama, Maria Bello, Emily Wickersham, etc., etc. You'd have them start. I wouldn't have anybody sort of guest star yet, so like nobody from either spin-off, the ones that exist at this point, so NCIS New Orleans or LA, nobody would come in. So I would have it sort of the NCIS episode end and then go to, say, New Orleans, and then have Scott Bakula and the team pick it up from there. And then from there, you would, you know, go through the episode and, oh, he's got ties to LA, then let's go to NCIS Los Angeles and have Chris O'Donnell, LL Cool J, and the rest of the team pick it up. And it's at this point where you would get the 3 NCIS shows that are on the air. So New Orleans, LA, and the main show, NCIS. You'd have cast members from each show sort of show up in LA. Keep in mind, like I said, you had ties to Hawaii. I would tie this to Hawaii in the episode of NCIS with Mark Harmon, Sean Murray, Wilmer Valderrama, Emily Wickersham, Maria Bello, etc., etc., right? So keep in mind, there's always those ties to Hawaii, but I would have this stretch over like 3 nights, 3 shows, leading into the introduction of the NCIS Hawaii team. So we're in LA, and they've got ties to LA, and they're still trying to figure this all out. It's at this point, they're on this episode of NCIS Los Angeles with Chris O'Donnell, Daniela Rua, LL Cool J, Barrett Fuller, Renee Foley Smith, and the rest of the team. I'd have everybody from each spin-off, or at least as many people that want to make these guest appearances: Scott Bakula, Rob Kirkovich, Lucas Black, Emily Wickersham, just anybody. I don't want to say that, you know, any cast member is less important or more important, but anybody that they can sort of guest star on NCIS Los Angeles on this night to spin off into NCIS Hawaii, get them to show up, get them to make this guest appearance to finally sort of put this thing to rest. So finally, this sort of culminates in Hawaii. I would have this sort of, because it's going to end in this 4-part sort of crossover event, almost like one of the Chicago Fire crossover events, or the Law and Order crossover events that NBC has. This 4-parter for the NCIS franchise would end up in Hawaii. Now, I'd have it start in LA, right? And as they were wrapping that up and then heading to Hawaii anyhow, I'd have it start in LA and then end up in Hawaii. Just very quickly, like, okay, well, now we have to go to Hawaii just to figure out who this person is. Or maybe I would tie it to, because Kian Talon, or Kyan Talon, is supposed to, he was cast as Vanessa Lachey, who's going to play Jane Tennant in NCIS Hawaii as her oldest son, oldest child on NCIS Hawaii. So maybe I would tie it to his character. Or maybe I would just go with the original plan, like I said in the beginning of the video, where I would have, say, like, you know, a Navy contractor or a Navy, somebody within the Navy, just like a dead body, sort of wash up and end up starting in, say, DC, in the DC area and the main NCIS show itself. But there's another route that they could go down if you tie it to, say, the Jane Tennant character, to her oldest child, to her son, who's gonna, like, that's the oldest child of her character. Why not just, you could start it there as well, but I would prefer, say, like, you know, you tie it to the Navy overall, or somehow connect it to the Navy, and then have this 4-parter sort of take place from there. So, sort of to wrap up this 4-parter and finally get it into Hawaii, the NCIS Hawaii territory, if you will, I would have the episode start in LA, so that would be the end of NCIS LA, and then, you know, you start up NCIS Hawaii, if you will, and they finally get to Hawaii. And they meet Vanessa Lachey, Jane Tennant, Yasmin Al-Bastami, Jason Antoon, the three sort of main characters to this NCIS Hawaii spinoff. Of course, you have Tori Anderson, Kyan Talon in there as well, but I would have this part where you're in Hawaii trying to introduce the NCIS Hawaii spinoff focused more on the Jane Tennant character and Jason Antoon's character and Yasmin Al-Bastami. Now, I would probably, when it comes to, like, say, the main NCIS show, I would throw sort of Katrina Law's character in there, Jessica Knight. I would bring her along as well, just have characters from each spin-off and each show in the NCIS universe that's still on the air. I'd have them all sort of just converge on Hawaii, but mainly I would have it kick off from the Los Angeles portion of the crossover. So, you know, you have cast members from each show up, and, you know, you meet Vanessa Lachey's Jane Tennant, Jason Antoon's character, Yasmin Al-Bastami's character, and they finally, you know, over the course of, say, an hour, or well, with commercials you get like 42 to 44 minutes, over the course of that episode they wrap it up, and at the end each, say, of the special agent in charge, or commanding officers, if you will, would just go, "Hey, you guys are all right, welcome to the team, and aloha." Have them say, "Yeah, so next time you're in town," just have them wrap it up, and then have them kind of, you know, introduce and settle in the NCIS Hawaii team, for lack of a better term. I can't necessarily think of it right now, but just have them kind of say, "You guys are all right, welcome to the NCIS family, and if you're ever, say, either in LA, DC, or New Orleans, look us up, or if you ever need a hand, you know who to call, and you know we've always got your back." And that's basically how I would introduce NCIS Hawaii. Just have it be a giant 4-part crossover between each show in the NCIS universe, have New Orleans still on the air, LA, and then the main show itself, NCIS. I was also playing with the idea of maybe getting, you know, Catherine Bell or David James Elliott from JAG involved, since NCIS itself is a spin-off of JAG, but maybe that might be a bit too much, and maybe even this 4-parter that I'm thinking of is a bit, that I just laid out for you all, is a bit much. But I mean, that's how I would do it. I would have cast members from each show. I'd have this whole 4-part crossover and just introduce NCIS Hawaii, because CBS is putting a lot of stock in this NCIS Hawaii spinoff, so why not just launch it the best way possible? Now, I know they're not doing that in real life, but, you know, as a hypothetical, and as a person like myself who's been a television director and has worked in production, like, this is how I would do it, and that's how I just want to lay it out to you all. So there it is, there you have it, how I would introduce NCIS Hawaii if I were in charge at CBS and tasked with bringing this NCIS Hawaii spinoff to life. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. This is going to wrap it up. I have been Leigh Dickey. Please comment, like, share, subscribe, all that good stuff. Leave us a 5-star rating and review on your favorite podcast app and player of choice. Links to both my podcasts, Yo Nostalgia and the Beats and Speaks podcast, are in the show notes and description for you all. But thanks again for watching. Again, I am Leigh Dickey. This is going to wrap up another video. Please do comment, like, share, subscribe. Hope you enjoyed the video. Please do take care. We will talk to you later. I'm signing off. We'll see you soon. Peace. Thanks for tuning in to Leigh Dickey TV. New episodes are available every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Subscribe to follow along with the fun.